And East Hampton Town Board, we are live.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the East Hampton Town Board's work session of August 8th. Carol, would you please read the roll call?
Present.
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 Present. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Today's meeting will begin with the public portion where any member of the public may address the board on any topic. We ask that you please try to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. The board will also discuss the following topics: the Phoenix House Outpatient Services Update, the Benson Reserve Invasive Vegetation Removal Project Follow-Up, and updated Certificate of Occupancy Change of Ownership. That will be followed by liaison reports, and we do have a few resolutions to approve this morning. Carol, do you have anyone signed up to speak? Then I'll take by show of hands anyone who wants to address the board after we go through the list of signups. Laura Michaels, please come up.
Am I first? Okay.
Yes, you are.
Great. First of all, I think I may be a little bit more than 3 minutes. Is that okay?
I'm sorry.
Maybe a little bit more than 3 minutes.
Try to keep it to 3 minutes if you would. Anything else you can submit to the town board?
Okay. I'm going to go fast then. Good morning, town board. My name is Laura Michaels. I'm the president of the Ditch Plains Association and a member of the Montauk CAC, but I'm speaking to you as a citizen of Montauk and the town of East Hampton. I'm trying not to be adversarial, and for the most part, I agree with most of the decisions you make as a town board. Still, I'm afraid I have to disagree with greenlighting a CCOM agenda of clearing vistas for a few wealthy donors disguised as a habitat restoration project at the Benson Bathing Beach Reserve for many reasons. First, since the last town board work session, the town board has been made aware of Judge Underwood's ruling on this property. The town is the landowner of the Benson Bathing Reserve property under the judicial order. The property is burdened with the covenants and restrictions described and is without right to erect fences, berms, and other structures on the reserve, and is forever barred from making claim to erect such structures. This was affirmed at the appellate level. It was a significant land use case in the state of New York, and I have been in contact with the author of the lawsuit who has affirmed the same. Because there is a willingness to use goats to keep the cost down, the town cannot allow CCOM or its consultants or contractors to install barns or fences or any other structures and fences to contain the goats because it will directly violate the Judge Underwood's ruling. Second, the project is labeled as a habitat restoration project when it is driven by a handful of wealthy landowners who desire the property to be cleared to improve views and their property values. This project was initially discussed with a select group from the Montauk Beach Owners Association at Hither Hills, which is due west of this property. There, the wealthy landowners pledged $200,000 and has multiple properties. When they couldn't get consensus from those people and the hundreds of landowners that are deeded with the right to access that reserve, they decided to move the project to the town-owned Benson Reserve to make the experiment. Many landowners who live directly across the street from the Benson Bathing Reserve have yet to learn of this project, and they were not asked for the same money. I, who consider myself a community leader and was unaware of this project until I saw a post on Build and Kind's Instagram account and subsequently watched the town board work session and read the press release. This felt to me like a fait accompli. Why wasn't the Montauk CAC made aware of this, and why wasn't there a presentation from CCOM to the Montauk CAC? There are many CCOM board members on that board, and our community liaison for the town is David Leese, who is the project lead. At the very least, the residents of Montauk should have had the courtesy of a public hearing, as it affects not only the landowners who live across the street from the reserve, but all of Montauk. The Benton Bathing Reserve is a well-established stable dune system with invasive plants and creates a mixture of very short and long stable root systems. Sure, they're invasives, but they can be seen all over Montauk, especially near bodies of water, and have arrived here by natural pollinators such as birds, animals, and wind. These invasives will forever be in Montauk and can only be eradicated or managed with significant funding forever. There is currently no danger or birds or wildlife to enlist such a project, but there is a danger to the common bird who will lose its habitat and be forced to relocate. It has also been determined that while Japanese knotwood is an invasive plant, it is also a very deep-rooted vertical and horizontal root system, creating a very stable environment for the dune and protection against erosion. There has been little to no erosion on these dunes for the last 24 years that I have been traversing the access paths. They did very well during standing and did not have any sandbag restoration required. The Benson Bathing Reserve is one of the most beautiful, wide, and white sandy beaches in Montauk. What I love about Montauk is its built-in self-maintenance system for invasive plants. All of these die off during the long, cold, winter months. Proof they are gone. This is the time to hand remove and mechanically cut. They will begin to grow again in late spring. These invasives only grow for about 4 months and then start to die off again. I live with them on multiple properties, and I am very familiar with their growth patterns and die-offs. I also live across the street from the reserve for 10 years and scheduled the maintenance for the access paths to traverse over to the water. Most of the paths and most of that dune structure has remained the same for the 24 years that I have been going there. The town should have undertaken a maintenance program when given the property, but it didn't. The access to the waterways to the water have only been maintained by the property owners directly across the street. That maintenance isn't even part of this plan. I wonder why the town would greenlight a project that needs an extensive year after year forever maintenance plan when it cannot even maintain and trim the trees down in Montauk. David Lees told me at a recent CAC meeting that if I wanted to have the dead branches taken off the trees in downtown Montauk, I would have to do it myself or find private funding. There are far more significant and needed water quality improvement and dune restoration projects in Montauk that threaten our water, pollution, waterways, contaminate, and distress our wildlife, distress our beaches, and threaten beachgoers, homeowners, and the economic vitality of Montauk. These projects have never received funding, even after they have brought to the attention of the town board and CCOM. There are all types of projects that would benefit from this time, effort, and money allocated. Ditch Plains, an economic driver to the town of East Hampton, would benefit from a dune restoration project, adding sand and fortifying the dune with native plants, and habitat restoration to ensure the dunes are stable from erosion. Ditch Plains is one of the most significant economic drivers for East Hampton, yet it needs more attention. Fort Pond would benefit from a public-private partnership to eradicate or redirect 12 storm drains that flow contaminated water and debris into the pond, causing distress to the important waterfowl who live there and expose tourists to harmful bacteria when they recreate. The Suffolk County grant money for habitat restoration would be better served in those areas other than the area of the Benson Reserve. In conclusion, if CCOM and the town board want to move forward with removing invasive plants on the Benson Reserve, the town must hold a public hearing for community input and public comment. Given the clear judicial restrictions on this property, invasives should only be removed by hand or mechanical means, or this project should move west to the Montauk Beach Owners Association. Thank you for your time and attention to this critical topic. I look forward to multiple productive discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Kevin McAllister.
Good morning, Town Board. Kevin McAllister of Defend H2O. Several items this morning. I want to commend the board for moving forward and trying to zip up a loophole and ambiguity on the geotextile structures, and hopefully enforcement will follow. Also, I hope you saw my letter of July 12th to Suffolk County Legislature concerning their recent dismissal of Clean Water Action. And that brings me into something I've been wanting to talk to the board for some time about, is the allocation of CPF water funds. The board knows I sat on the committee for a couple of years. It's probably been a couple of years since. I certainly follow Southampton closely. I've been very vocal in some of the allocations that I feel, particularly I'm speaking about pond remediation, freshwater bodies, where some of the allocations have gone to what is really short-term projects, treating the symptom as opposed to the true disease. Southampton, Lake Agawam, for instance, peroxide treatment, ultrasonic sound, I believe, and more recently, I believe a $2 million allocation I'm not sure if it's entirely Southampton, my facts are not clear there, but for essentially a giant pool filter to filter out blue-green algae. These are all cosmetic fixes. Now, bringing that closer to home, the harvesting of macroalgae in Georgica, floating wetlands on Fort Pond. Again, any effectiveness, and I would argue in freshwater bodies, and this is settled science, phosphorus is a limiting nutrient. We're talking bottom sediments. Obviously, there's other issues, and particularly bringing it to Fort Pond, you heard Laura mention, I believe, 12 outfalls, and I've seen some of the work that she's done with investigative review of some of these outfalls. The board may recall a couple years ago, I think after CPF was approved, I urged the board, don't lose sight of stormwater. That if this was exclusively for IA systems, and now, as I said, I think there's really been a bit of a gold rush, if you will, with the fund from the privates, other entities seeking, smaller scale projects that are, again, very short-term in effectiveness. You turn off the plants, the floating wetlands, that's it. The system shut down. There's not long-term improvement to these systems unless we go to the sources. We're talking obviously cesspools in groundwater, 12 stormwater pipes. Are they into dry wells, they direct discharges? And I know this is very complicated when you're dealing with stormwater with other agencies, the state, the county. I know this, but we've got to push that because really we want legacy fixes to this fund and not allocations to, good meaning groups, well-meaning groups. Again, I think that's extremely important. And lastly, on the, this goes, I guess, to the Benson project as well as a larger context. I'm very aware of coastal resiliency. My definition of it may not match up with everyone else, but I think we use that term very loosely. It was tossed around in Benson for bringing, goats in to basically crop down vegetation in the scrub, and somehow that's coastal resiliency. Now, let's be factual and true about, again, some of the approaches to remediation, particularly in the ponds. And again, let's really focus the money on meaningful legacy improvements. And again, with direct awareness to this, with the annual fund, if you will, let it roll over if you don't have good candidate projects. And you may be able to check all the boxes, but the one box is not permanent fixes with some of these allocations. So again, revisit that, let the money sit, buy oceanfront property and ditch when it becomes available. That's true resiliency. Affecting the money to stormwater remediation where there's permanent fixes in the array of discharges to Fort Pond. That's legacy, that's meaningful fixes. So please consider what I say today. I have utmost respect for this board. I know you're trying to do your best, but again, let's be thoughtful about it and, really have things effectively work. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. Jeannie Nielsen.
Good morning, everybody. I am here in my individual capacity as a resident and property owner directly affected by the Benson Reserve. I did write 2 emails to the board since the presentation on July, I think the 18th, expressing my concerns that fences, berms, hard structures of any kind, whether they're permanent, and permanent or not, are not allowed. It's a judge's order. That lawsuit, my family was one of the 4 plaintiffs. It was a hard-fought lawsuit. It was expensive. We did succeed. And, the concern is coming in and trying to fix something there that isn't broken. It's just totally not necessary. Putting a maintenance plan in place is wonderful. Putting goats on the property. You know, I run a small business. I have extremely large debt, and I can't afford to not have the summer season go well because people know there are goats across the street. What happens when the fireworks go off on 4th of July and the goats are on the property? There's just too many concerns. And I would ask today that the resolution be tabled until such a time when the 50 or so neighbors that most don't have any idea that this is going on are brought into the conversation along with the general public, and we do have a public hearing, and let's talk about it. My idea was to put it west on the Montauk Beach Property Owners Association property, but I heard most of the people in that group just said absolutely no. And I was also informed that there have been meetings
All
every Thursday
participants
night
are muted.
by some of the supposedly wealthier property owners along that highway. And it's like, I'm not one of those people, but I would have certainly wanted to be in on the conversation and be in on the on helping develop a plan. So I'm not opposed to the town putting a management project in place, but the lawsuit clearly cuts the goats out, any kind of fencing whatsoever. So that's not a solution here. The bird species are fantastic. We're going to be taking away their habitat. There's at least 15 bird species that was named in the presentation. Yeah, we might not have pheasants, we might not have a woodchuck, but you know, we have a really good corridor that's healthy, and it should remain healthy. And that's what I'd like to see, and I would like to volunteer my time to coming up with a good plan and being in on these meetings with all of my neighbors. But I think all the neighbors need to know that this is happening, and they have been completely in the dark. So, like I said, being a plaintiff in that lawsuit that we were successful at, you know, the deed to I own number 739, number 743, and number 19 Twin Pond Lane. We depend on that beach. So I would ask for this resolution to be tabled today until it can be discussed in more depth with the people who are most affected by that plan and be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Gloria Frazee. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm just calling up Gloria Frazee.
Good morning.
Good
I'm
morning.
coming on a completely different topic, and my hat's off to all the folks who are working so hard on the Benson Reserve. I'm here on behalf of East Hampton Compost, which is a collaboration between the town of East Hampton and Rewild Long Island. And I'd like to start off quickly with a few very heartfelt thanks for this fabulous program. Kate Rogers, without whom this would not exist. Paul Hamilton, who runs the Sag Harbor, the Springs Farmers Market, who is kind enough to host us, and Craig Frick at the dump, who is so cool. He took us on a compost tour last Saturday, and it was really neat. You know, it gets up to 160 degrees in the windrows, and it's hot. It's so cool to see these food scraps being converted. We've had great community participation over the past 4 weeks. More than 90 households have signed up at the scrap collection table. We've had everyone from 3-year-old Mina to a pair of siblings who are 70 and change. And we've got great high school student participation. They are manning the table where we're collecting food scraps. They're part of the Rewild Summer Internship Program for high school students. I'd like to invite everyone to come to the table. They will meet Savvy or Lola or Kelly or Abe or all of them. It's just really fabulous. We've had people coming to the table donating various items such as compost bins. So now they're going to the high school, and the high school kids are going to start composting at the high school as a result of this. So cool. Okay, a quick rundown on numbers, because we always like data too. So we've been operating for 4 weeks. Week 1, we had 13 participants, 56 pounds. Week 2, 26 participants, 153 pounds. Week 3, 32 participants dropping off, 184 pounds. And this past weekend, we were at 41 drop-offs, 274 pounds. Plus, we did a pilot with the Surf Lodge. They had a special dinner and they had their kitchen staff save the food scraps from that dinner. They added another 55 pounds to our total for the weekend. So to date, we have collected 722 pounds in food scraps just in 4 weeks. So everyone who has perfect attendance this week got a perfect potato. So I've got lots of pictures that are about to go up on Instagram with perfect potatoes. And I would like to invite each of you, even though you do not have perfect attendance, to take a potato and come join us at the Springs Farmers Market drop-off, which is from 9 to 1 p.m. every Saturday, or at Sag Harbor, which has a drop-off from 10 a.m. to noon every Saturday at the Farmers Market. Thank you.
And Gloria, just if folks want to join, where would they go get information?
Go to easthamptoncompost.org.
Thank you. It's amazing numbers. Thank you. I love my potato.
It's a local East Hampton potato.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you.
That
Thank you,
concludes those who've signed up. Do we have any callers on the line?
Yes, we have one caller on the line.
Comment.
Hello, caller ending 21111, I think. You're on the air.
Thank you. I am Lee Burse, the owner of 813 and 809 Montauk Highway in Montauk. These properties are contiguous to 92, 94 South Euclid, separated by an alley for the past 80 years. The design of the alleyway was to allow ease of access to all property. My concerns, which I would like you to consider, are as follows. I can no longer access my property or reach my parking areas as a dangerous physical barrier has been placed between my property and the alleyway. There is over a 12-inch drop, and you cannot drive a vehicle over it. This barrier has now created a situation in which the alleyway is for the exclusive use of the 92, 94 South Euclid properties. This design, containing several inches of fill, several inches of asphalt, and a curb, are not in the approved design and plan. The plan called for 1.5 inches of asphalt. This is a deliberate ignoring of the approved plan and has resulted in several areas of concern for me. The water now travels at a more rapid rate of speed created by the steep slope of the asphalt, and I'm concerned about flooding that has never been an issue previously. It has also created a legal issue and a hazard by having a bump between South Euclid properties and the Montauk Highway properties in which a pedestrian might fall and trip. And the total filling in of South Euclid is, I believe, not allowed. Finally, my concern is that I know you are aware of some of these issues. They are posing serious concerning issues for me. I would appreciate your immediate attention and the resolving of these issues. And in my opinion, the fill needs to be removed, the curb needs to be eliminated, the asphalt needs to be removed and replaced with the 1.5 inches approved in the site plan. I thank you for your time and attention, and if you have any questions I might be able to answer, I would be happy to do so.
Lee, I appreciate you taking the time to call in today. The town is aware of the issues there at South Euclid, and we're working to resolve them.
Okay, I I am currently in Maine. If need be, I'd be happy to come down and present to you, but this seemed like a reasonable way to make you aware of how concerned I am about this. Owning a piece of property, my dad for 80 years, and now this. So thank
Understood.
you very, very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so
Again, we
much.
appreciate you taking the time to call in. Are there any other callers on the line?
There are no other callers currently on the line.
Okay, I'll go back to the meeting room. Yes, sir. By show of hands, anyone else who wishes to address the board? Tom, would just come up and introduce yourself and
Hi, and thank you very much for, I was not planning on speaking today. I do not want to make a regular habit of speaking at these meetings, but I just want to follow up on
you just
something.
introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Tom McMorrow, and I am the tenant at 813 Montauk Highway. I just want to follow up on what one of the owners of that property said, particularly about flooding. This morning, about 2.5 hours ago, we had a real torrential rainstorm, very short-lived, but very heavy. Unfortunately, I did not print the photos up, but I took a couple of photos immediately outside my door. My doormats were floating in about 1.5 inches of water. That has never been the case before in such a short duration storm. So I'm going to, if you all don't mind, I would like to email you the photos so you can just see what I dealt with this morning.
Yes, please feel free to do so.
Thank you very much for hearing me. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to address the board at this time? Any other callers on the line, Jason?
We have no other callers on the line.
Okay, we'll conclude public comment and move on to topics. And the first up, Kathy, if you'd care to introduce.
Sure. Today we have folks from Phoenix House Outpatient Services. They're going to give us an update. Adam Maslowski will be presenting. And we've been in partnership with Phoenix House. We've given a grant to them for long before I was on the board. So more than 10 years. I don't know if you know the history, Adam or Alana, of how long the town has supported the program on Springs Fireplace Road.
Sounds about right.
Okay.
You know, the outpatient program has been existing in East Hampton for greater than 20 years. So my name is Adam Maslowski. I'm the Director of Outpatient Services for Phoenix Houses of New York and Long Island. And I just want to tell you a little bit about Phoenix House, a little bit about our history, some of the services we're providing out of the East Hampton location, and also essentially what we're doing on the East End and the East Hampton community in terms of our dedication to East Hampton. And so Phoenix Houses of New York, Phoenix Houses started in 1967. We've been around for a long time. And the way that Phoenix House started was there were 6 individuals in New York City that were struggling with opioid use disorder, specifically heroin, and they met in a detoxification program and moved into a brownstone on the Upper West Side. And what really gave structure and clinical soundness to the program was the entrance of Dr. Mitch Rosenthal, a psychiatrist, and his team from Addiction Services Agency, which were counselors. And that was really the beginning of Phoenix House. And since that time in 1968, we were declared we moved into a independent nonprofit state. And we've developed 97 programs across 52 locations in 9 states. Now, Phoenix Houses of New York and Long Island operates independently from those other locations. So we really focus on New York and Long Island.
Chelsea, if you could advance the slide.
Mm-hmm.
There we
Oh,
go.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So moving on to East Hampton outpatient, and the next slide is East Hampton outpatient. Like I said, we've been providing services in the East Hampton community for greater than 20 years. We are a OASIS accredited provider. That is our state regulatory body that makes sure that we're providing good quality care. And it really speaks to who we are as Phoenix House. We are here to deliver high quality services from licensed credentialed professionals with a patient-centered holistic approach to treatment. We're also monitored by CARF International, which is an international body, accreditation body, again, assuring that we are providing high quality services that are appropriate and within the regulatory standards of both of these organizations. And I must say that Phoenix House has received a maximum 3-year accreditation from CARF. East Hampton Outpatient has received a 3-year accreditation from Oasis, which is the maximum allowable. So it just evidences our commitment to providing services within a set of standards, right? And it's so important that these standards are provided within the East Hampton community. We want to provide good quality care. So we provide a long list of services out of East Hampton. We provide screening, brief intervention, and referral. So these might be for individuals who may be at risk of developing substance use disorder. So it's a brief intervention, and if needed, we can refer them to outpatient services. We provide comprehensive assessment. So when an individual comes into care or for an assessment, we're looking at all of the person's life areas. It's not just about the substance abuse. We're looking at, of course, substance abuse history and dependency, but we're looking at medical health. We're looking at psychiatric illness. We're looking at family functioning. We're looking at recreational and social living. We're looking at education, vocation, legal, housing. So treatment is really comprehensive, and it's also individualized for each individual that walks in the door, because everyone may have a similar story in that they're dealing with substance use disorder, but that is the intersection. Everything else is really varied. So it's so important that we provide individual care. And we've been doing this for a long time. We stand on the cutting edge of substance use and mental health treatment. Aside from that, we provide continuing care. So part of our discharge planning is when treatment ends, addiction doesn't necessarily end. It may be in remission. So we look at addiction as a disease model. So just like oncology, right? Cancer can go into remission, so can substance use disorder. And that, not to get into the weeds of the clinical, but once there's no signs and symptoms for 12 months, a person is technically in remission. Continuing care allows aftercare. It's a never-ending opportunity for people to access psychiatric services and medication monitoring, group services on demand when they want it and need it, individual psychotherapy, peer services, and case management. So treatment doesn't necessarily end. Well, treatment ends, but resources don't end. So I have individuals that have been in continuing care for years, and they come and go as they need for whatever services they need, and it's a wonderful thing. We also provide all of our treatment as evidence-based. So all of our clinicians, and I'll talk about our team, are licensed clinicians. And so all of our treatment and all of our interventions are all evidence-based. It's so important that the data drives treatment, not what an individual thinks will work. So we all operate from an evidence-based perspective in terms of what we do. We provide family treatment. So an individual can come into treatment, and their families can also come in for individual group family services, group for the families, but also family members and significant others can actually be enrolled in the program as a significant other. So they can receive individual psychotherapy, they can receive medication management if there's underlying mental health conditions, because the whole idea is if someone's dealing with substance use disorder in the family, the other members are inextricably linked to that person. So the behavior works off of each other, and sometimes people are ending up with, mental health stressors and dysfunction and all of that. So we want to work with people so they can understand how to take care of themselves and also how to support their loved one in remaining in care. Like I mentioned, we provide psychiatric care and medication monitoring, individual psychotherapy, peer services through a certified recovery peer advocate who comes from a space of lived experiences in mental health and substance use disorder. So they're trained, credentialed, they take exams, and then they are supervised by a quality health professional like myself. And so we're doing everything from escorts to court appearances, to social services, securing benefits for people, peer coaching. So the peer service professionals are very, very important to what we do. We provide medication-assisted treatment. I'll get into a little bit deeper in just a moment, but not too deep. These are medications that are provided to assist people in the recovery process. They're not silver bullets. So the psychosocial treatment and the services provided bolster those medications, and I'll talk about them a little bit more in depth. We also provide naloxone or Narcan training to community members, staff, clientele. This is the medication that reverses opioid overdose. So very, very important, very, very effective. My work bag is right there. I always carry a kit with me in case you ever come across someone who's in need. It saves lives all the time. It's incredible, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. Also want to talk about the AIMS program. So we're working with the East Hampton High School. We went through school board approval. We started this last year, and I'll talk a little bit more about AIMS in the next slide. We're also working in event planning for varied months like Mental Health Awareness Month, Black History Month. We're always doing services and events representative of what's going on within our calendar year. And in terms of engaging with other organizations, Alana, who is the program coordinator, clinic coordinator, has coordinated with the retreat to bring DV, domestic violence training, to Phoenix House that went wide through the entire region. We've also connected with St. Luke's Episcopal Church to work together, and also OLA of Eastern Long Island. We have some upcoming plans that are kind of in the works right now. So I'll be providing some training to their staff, and we're looking to maybe have a surf and skate for wellness for the youth of the East End in September. It's very much in the early planning stages. So we want to connect with the Eastern Long Island providers to meet the needs of the community. So as far as the team at East Hampton, there's 3 licensed clinicians, including myself. I happen to be a social worker. Alana's a social worker. We have Kathy Bopp. We also have a peer service professional, like I mentioned, Sharita Simmons, and 2 psychiatric mental health nurse practitioners, one of which is the director of medical services for Phoenix House. They provide the psychiatric services to our clients and our patients. I have to mention, there are deficits currently in behavioral health. There's a behavioral health shortage in this country that is unprecedented. It has long been existing in terms of staffing, especially with quality candidates. Post-pandemic, a lot of the master's level clinicians coming out of their master programs, a lot of them are going to telehealth providers so they can work from home. I get it. But it leaves us with a big deficit. And another aspect of the deficit is being in Eastern Long Island, there's not a whole lot of master's level credentialed clinicians that are living out on the East End. So we travel. Ms. Quinn travels from Hampton Bays. I happen to live in New Jersey. I recently moved from the Bronx to New Jersey, so I travel out here weekly for the school program. Alana is out here every day. And it's just to evidence the challenge, but also our commitment to the East End. We love the work we do, and it's just evidenced in how we behave. We will never give up on this community. Travel is nothing to us. We are committed to the folks that are here. It's just very important for us to incentivize folks to come out and work out in Eastern Long Island at our clinic and account for the commute. So there's challenges in that, being that we're a nonprofit, and sometimes the hospital-based systems can offer higher salaries. So we're really, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. I've had people accept positions and then in the end decline because they were offered more money within a hospital-based program. So that's our team. A little bit about the AIMS program, Assisted Intervention for the Management of Substance Abuse at East Hampton High School. First, I want to say, just a stat, early intervention works, right? So 70% of individuals who try an illicit substance on or before the age of 13, 70% will develop a substance use disorder within the next 7 years, right? So 70%. If we delay that onset to 17 years old, the onset, it's 27%. So by delaying that 4-year gap, we can reduce the prevalence of substance use disorder from 70% down to 27. And that's the purpose of our partnership with East Hampton High School. I can't speak highly enough of my engagement with, Principal Sarah Smith, Mr. Ralph Nagliaria, Jill Collins, and Aubrey Peterson. They have been wonderful. It's been a professional, just high point for me to work with that team and work in the high school. So we're holding office hours every Tuesday in the East Hampton High School. So whenever there's an issue, we can engage with those students, right? So we can provide the full range of services from our clinic. We also, in part of the proposal that I provided to the East Hampton High School, included family craft training. So it's how the family takes care of themselves during these times, manage the stressors that come along with having a family member or loved one dealing with substance use disorder, and also learning how to encourage that individual to participate in treatment without doing harm to the relationship and to themselves, right? So all of those services are available. But what I found by holding my office hours every Tuesday is the school program needs really are when a student has a disciplinary interaction. It may be around vaping, THC, something like that. I have an intervention with that student. And some of those students want to see me repeatedly. And then there's another track where a student can actually enroll in services with the family. So we have these two tracks within the AIMS program, but primarily what I've been doing out there is pro bono work. I had one student that enrolled, and we had two services. So we're really doing pro bono work within the East Hampton High School. But besides those brief interventions, we've been doing in-service events for the East Hampton High School. So I started with a presentation to the entire student body about vaping and the risks of nicotine vaping, because it's something in our high schools, as we all know, that's really, really prevalent. And so we did it over 2 weeks. And I met students in groups of 50 or less. And so I was able to address the entire student population of about 800 to 900 students over that in-service. I've also provided in-services in some of the classrooms for professional development. So I did an in-service about the helping professions like social work, marriage, family therapists, psychiatry, psychology, nurse practitioners, and just talked about those career paths and what they look like and how you would achieve those professional positions, through education and experience. And then I did another in-service about compassion fatigue and burnout, which can be really, evidenced throughout all varied professions. So how to identify it, how to combat it. So a lot of in-service work as well, and we're going to continue that. And just so the board knows, Sarah Smith did reach out to me in our legal department, and we're going to continue our program independent of funding. We are dedicated to East Hampton. And then, of course, our prevention through meeting with the children. And if we can delay that onset, if we could reduce reuse, if we can build some educational background, these young folks know potentially what they're getting into. I briefly, on to the next slide, just want to mention, and I'm not going to belabor this, because I know I've been up here for a moment. Phoenix House is very dedicated to the treatment of psychiatric illness and psychiatric symptoms. There's a strong connectivity between substance use disorder and mental health. A large percentage of individuals with substance use disorder have underlying mental health diagnoses and vice versa. So hence our team being master's level clinicians, psychiatric mental health nurse practitioners, and many of us, myself included, I've worked in psychiatric hospitals for children and adolescents, inpatient and partial hospitalization. I've worked for Montefiore Medical Center in the Bronx in their psych and wellness unit, provide services to individuals in Brooklyn, Queens, everything except Staten Island. And, Kathy has worked with adolescents within residential programs, and Alana's been with Phoenix House for quite some time. So my point is, we are trained, experienced, and supervised to be able to provide high-quality mental health services. And so we provide a holistic approach to treatment. We focus on evidence-based treatment. We've also shifted to telehealth services during COVID to expand the catchment. There was, and I'll talk about this, it's a bit sobering towards the end, but there was a big exacerbation in overdose during the pandemic. We reacted to that exacerbation and really targeting the things that were contributing to it, right? Lack of access to services, lack of access to medication-assisted treatment, lack of access to psychiatric care. So we immediately shifted to telehealth services when the city shut down. And so we were able to provide care right away. And so it's something we're very, very committed to. And we want to make sure that people have access and early access to these services. Next slide is medication-assisted treatment. Just a little education around this. There's varied medication-assisted treatments that are on and off label for the treatment of substance use disorder, alcohol, cocaine, and most importantly, I shouldn't say most importantly, equally as importantly is opioid use disorder. We've just seen a huge exacerbation in overdose, and we'll talk about a little bit, and its contributing factor of fentanyl. But it's a primary contributor to overdose and overdose deaths in Suffolk County, New York, and the United States. Medication-assisted treatment for opioids is considered the gold standard treatment, which has been demonstrated to be safe and effective with counseling and psychosocial support. In the past year, among the 2.5 million folks who were suffering from opioid use disorder, only about 11.2% of folks who were meet criteria for that received it. East Hampton Outpatient has remained a qualified and available location for medication-assisted treatment, remaining on the cutting edge of behavioral health. We also are a big provider of Narcan training. I mentioned Narcan or naloxone. It's the opioid reversal medication. So we are providing these trainings in the community around East Hampton on our site to our clientele, and it's a major lifesaver. Like I said, I carry it in my bag. If someone's suffering from overdose, we are trained how to identify that, respond to it, and deliver the medication, and it's incredibly effective. And we've also shifted to harm reduction for folks who maybe are not fully committed to pure abstinence. So we want to make sure people are safe. So we can provide some harm reduction initiatives like fentanyl test strips and resources and things like that, xylazine test strips, because we've seen xylazine starting to infiltrate the illicit substance supply as well. And it's really a concoction that is just deadly. And so we need to, as a treatment community and a community at large, really garner our resources to combat this. It's just so deadly. So I do want to mention something. On August 31st, we commemorate International Overdose Awareness Day nationally. So International Overdose Awareness Day for 2023, the theme is recognizing people who go unseen. So we're acknowledging people in our communities who maybe don't get highlighted about their commitment. This includes emergency service personnel, police, firemen, EMT, and just the people who go unseen during this crisis, because I don't know if people are really aware of the commitment that our emergency services and our police force and our police officers are playing in combating this. They are on the front line and they save lives every single day in Suffolk, throughout Long Island, into the city and beyond. But just a little background, it's been around for 22 years. It started in Australia, and the idea was to build, empathy, to combat stigma associated with overdose and addiction at large. And so internationally, we celebrate this, and we'll have events throughout Long Island and the city commemorating it. We're having a big event at East Hampton. The overdose death rate in response, it was very high during the pandemic. We saw a 30% increase in overdose rates, really connected to the disruption of services, right? So Phoenix House has really dedicated itself to maintaining those services and expanding our catchment. And so, just in terms of hope, right, and outcomes, we're seeing people recover every day. It's one of the benefits that Alana and I get to see throughout our work at Phoenix House is we see people come into treatment and improve in all of these varied ways, not just the substance use, but improvements in mental health, building healthy relationships, education, employment, career, parenting skills, and family connectivity, general overall health. We're working to treat people with hepatitis and other infectious diseases. So we really pull that wraparound services. So Alana has planned an amazing commemoration of International Opioid Awareness Day at the East Hampton site. So we're going to have a Narcan training and distribution for all attendees, a mural. So Alana has been going to varied facilities throughout Long Island and working with individuals in treatment to create this mural. We did one last year. It came out beautiful, and it's all via active recovering individuals. We'll have a speaker engagement in a Q&A about behavioral health interventions to combat overdose and associated implications of overdose. We're going to be there to support, educate, and provide linkages to services. We're going to have a candlelight vigil for those lost, and in commemoration of community members and emergency service personnel who have participated in awareness and intervention. And we'll have available clinical support because it is pretty, it's a heavy topic and people have been impacted. So I do again want to thank you, Phoenix Houses of New York and Long Island, and this representative, myself, of the treatment and recovery community, request the Town of East Hampton representatives to officially declare August 31st International Overdose Awareness Day. This requested memorializing proclamation will help call attention to the tragic losses associated with overdose and its dedication to elevate and recognize the importance of the day, raising community awareness, education, and intervention. I want to thank you. To the Phoenix House team members who are here, Ms. Alana, Ms. Christina Packman, and I also want to thank our longest standing board member, Ms. Nancy Hoven, who's been with us since the beginning of Phoenix House in 1967. And she's just been an avid supporter of what we do here and an avid supporter of the treatment and recovery community. And I want to thank you for coming and joining us today. And I also want to thank the community members for hearing us out. And thank you to the board.
Thank you, Adam and Alana, Nancy, and Christina. We appreciate all that you do in the community. It's such a critical service that you provide for many. I wish it wasn't a necessary service, but it is, and we certainly appreciate that you're here for East Hampton residents. And I think that comprehensive approach that you've taken in dealing with substance issues, really has paid dividends for those who receive those services. Are there any questions from board members?
No, I plan to have a resolution on for the August 17th meeting, memorializing resolution for International Overdose Awareness Day. And I wanted to see, Nancy, did you want to make a couple of remarks? Did you want to? Could you come up to the podium? Great.
Yeah, I've been around for 55 years with Mitch Rosenthal. We got it started in New York on the Upper East Side, and it spread across the country, but we now are concentrated in New York. Phoenix House there are some in Florida and in California, but this is our concentration. And I live part-time out here, and so I have enjoyed visiting in Wayne Scott to our residential community, and of course visited with Alana and all the things. But it occurred to me, well, one of the things is the Artists and Writers Ball Game. We are beneficiaries in part, so anybody, you should all come to the game anyway. And then just finally, everyone should think about carrying a Narcan package with them, because you never can tell when you're going to run across somebody who has taken something they thought was a safe medication, and it turns out that it's been laced with fentanyl. And that's a terrible, terrible menace, because it's affecting people across the board. So that's my message. And, support Phoenix House.
Thank you so much, Nancy.
I did just want to mention one thing, I do appreciate the funding provided from East Hampton to Phoenix House. It lends directly to us being able to attract talent. We are humbly asking for a little bit more through our grant, but really it's specific to support that school program. Because like I said, we are committed to the school program. I was just in conversation with Principal Sarah Smith this week. We are continuing our contract through, but like I said, it's primarily pro bono services, and I still will continue to drive out here every single Tuesday, but it would certainly be a great help to maintaining those office hours and also attracting talent. We have an open clinician line at the East Hampton practice that's been open for over a year. And the challenge is that commute and also competitive salaries. So I do want to thank the town board and the town of East Hampton for your contribution to Phoenix House and the services we provide.
Well, thank you. And we certainly understand the commute issue and the challenges it presents. So we deal with that as well in terms of hiring and retaining.
I can imagine. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you for all you do. Thank you.
Making the trip.
That brings us up to our next agenda item.
Hey, Chelsea.
I believe we have Rusty Schmidt on the line. Jason, if you could bring him in.
We also have David Frudenthal. Is he on the next one?
David Frudenthal from CCOM. Please allow him in as well.
Right.
Do you have anybody else in the waiting room?
I have no one else in the waiting room.
Okay. We also have our Director of Natural Resources, Kim Shaw, here as well. Again, this is a follow-up on the Benson Reserve Invasive Vegetation Removal Project.
Sure. We wanted to follow up because we have been alerted that there's residents' concerns about information that might have been either received incorrectly or unknown to residents, and some of them have appeared today. We wanted to make sure that we had all our short form EAF assessment forms 1 and 2 up on the town's website, which they are right now, as we prepare to potentially move forward with this project here. Part about it is that there will be if the project moves ahead, there is not going to be any disturbance for the residents to get to the beach. That part of the reservation has always been intact. Any type of potential use of goats would be in a temporary fashion on there. But besides that, we have others that are here right now. I wanted to go over each one right now. Is the short form assessment on there. Short form assessment one, Rusty Schmidt, who is an environmental engineer, excuse me. Can you go over the short form one and how you wrote that up, please, for us, Rusty?
Yeah, so we looked at the part one short form EAF for the entire project. I just did part one and then passed it off to the town for review. In that short form, all the pieces that were reviewed were zoning and regulations, natural resource community aspects like critical environmental area, wetlands, endangered species, and natural heritage program. We also looked into some things that doesn't make a lot of sense, but need to be part of the short form EAF, like the traffic, energy, water, and wastewater usage on the property. As we're not building anything, there should be no additions to traffic or energy or water. We looked at stormwater concerns, State Historical Preservation Office, or SHPO, the 100-year floodplain, and solid and hazardous waste concerns for the site. So we looked at all of those pieces, wrote it up into the short form EAF, and then passed it on to the town. And I think I can pass this on to Kim Shaw to talk about part two.
Thank you, Rusty.
So Rusty prepared the EAF part one, and then the town proceeded to prepare the part two. Basically, the narrative discusses the Benson Reserve, the 40 acres, and the habitat management plan. At issue, as we all know, is the top third of the property that's parallel to Old Montauk Highway, which is about 16 acres. We looked at whether or not we need a New York State DEC, and we're above the 10-foot contour, so we're out of their jurisdiction. We also looked at the CHA zone, coastal erosion hazard area, and we're well north of that. So the project does not need state approval. I have prepared a joint application to New York State DC and Army Corps in hopes to get a letter of non-jurisdiction from them. I did speak to their duty analyst a week or so ago. I sent maps, and I just want to get it in writing, so that's in the works, and I hope I'll have that in a timely fashion. We also have prepared FAQ, like you said, David, that's up online, and we did the environmental assessment and habitat management and restoration initiatives, we've been doing for years. When I first started here about 12 years ago, I did my first one at Pussy's Pond. It was people don't like change, but what we did there was we stabilized the shoreline, removed the invasive species, and for the past 7 years, there hasn't been any regrowth of the frag along the shoreline. We also planted a lot of natives on School Street side and got a lot of pushback from that and said, yeah, but it was better before, it was all lawn, but we were losing the shoreline. So we butted that shoreline up, planted a bunch of native vegetation, did some bioswales to control stormwater, and it's a beautiful park right now. It's got defined paths to get down to the water, a bench, so it's still, heavily utilized. At the Benson Reserve, again, we were not planning on removing any of the public access. It was just addressing that invasive species along that top third in the 16 acres. And the goat management areas, that comprised about half of that, or 8 acres in 4 discrete zones. That's about it, really.
So to address a couple of the concerns on here, Rob Connolly, I'm okay, and I would think it'd be appropriate to go to a public hearing sometime potentially in September on this. Would that assist individuals that are interested parties to have notification, knowing that in the written determination, it is noted there's 50 to 90 potential reservation holders or such, but we don't know who they necessarily all are at this time, but we can serve a public notice about any potential future action.
Correct. You could serve public notice, put it on the website, post the property for a public hearing, and invite the reservation holders to come and air their concerns or support for the program. It's I don't know how, it would be a very long and arduous process to try to determine exactly who each and every one of the reservation holders are. So I think public hearing would be the best course of action.
And as far as the website, by the end of the day, we'll be placing up there under the government page and under town projects an FAQ page, and then also information about the last PowerPoint presentation. If there's questions or that wants to be shared. So some of the comments that were earlier also stated that to Rusty Schmidt, as far as this project moving ahead, what are the benefits of using potential non-mechanical methods on the property?
Yeah, no problem. So for 8 of the 16 acres, it's fairly flat and or flat-ish and full of shrubs and a little easier to manage mechanically. And the mechanical method is a one and done, so it's a positive. But the other 8 acres are on steep slopes and is predominantly vines with a different root system. So they are on steep slopes of 20-30+%. Once we get over 30%, we can't have machines on that slope. It's just impractical and dangerous for the operators. And then so that means that on some of these areas, we would have to use humans on foot to manage and do the work by hand, which is the vines are not only multiflora rose and greenbrier that are trying to grab you and poke you, but then you also have things, poison ivy mixed in. And so getting a crew to do that work is going to be less opportunity for that kind of crew to come out to do the work. And then the last piece to this is we're on these steep slopes. If we're going to end up pulling these plants out by hand, that means we're disturbing the soils, and now we're on a steep slope. So now we need to really reinforce we're going to always put up SWIP, stormwater pollution prevention, erosion control barriers. But in this case, we'd have to do more extensive erosion control barriers, do little sections at a time, remove the soil, hope that we don't get a rain before we can protect it and keep it from moving. And so it would be more complicated with the erosion control measures that would need to be in place. And so with all that said, it's probably going to increase the cost by about 3 times if we use a human directive instead. So the goats are a better solution to get the bulk of the material pulled out of the way, and to be a lot better for the environment in regards to erosion and the steep slopes.
Thank you, Rusty. As far as discussion and public outreach is always one of the toughest things the town board has to contend with any projects. This actually was discussed at the Montauk CAC twice. One in actually greater detail. The last one was just a couple months ago. As far as assisting with any type of public assistance with anything from removal of tree branches to assistance of moving heavy flotsam and jetsam that was down at Ditch Plains just this past week so that we can get the beaches cleaned by beach rakes. The town board, and myself particularly, always looks at partnerships with residents for assistance on any endeavor we can do to keep our township beautiful. I believe this potential project also looks into our open vista projects that the town have had and try to bring this potential area back to what it looked like when it was a former life-saving station. The resolution that is on today is in support of the Benson Preserve Habitat Restoration Project, and specifically in the language of it. The language of it is so that there could be a grant that could be applied for funding of this. And part of the language of this is that the Habitat Restoration Project is subject to the rights of interested parties. So that makes sure that the interested parties understand that anything we do here would be with communications to them. So that's what we wanted to make sure we updated to the board, to other residents' concerns. And we have Jeremy Sambleson here from planning. I think David Friedenthal might be on from CCOM. Rusty Schmidt, Kim Shaw are here. I don't know if there's any questions from the town board, but I would probably look forward to putting this resolution forward for today so that grant could be applied for. It doesn't mean the project necessarily goes ahead, but then also look to do a public hearing potentially in September.
Any questions from
Can I
board
ask
members?
what grant are we applying for? What's the timing on that grant?
Sure. David, are you on?
I can answer that.
Sure.
The deadline for submission is August 11th. It's state funding.
And just for the public's interest, what is the actual grant? Who's the applying to?
Consolidated funding. I'm not sure of the specific funding.
It's a water quality improvement project out of the Department of Environmental Conservation, New York State DEC.
So the grant application could be submitted provided that the board signs off on pursuing that grant. Then it would be reviewed by the DEC to see if it's eligible and to be awarded. Correct?
That's correct. It's a competitive program that New York State DEC is running.
And how much money are we applying for, or is it?
CCUM's actually applying for the grant.
That's what I'm trying to.
CCUM is applying, and I don't have the.
We as the property owner are, being asked to give our permission for this grant to be applied for, and obviously this is in the very early stages, and I don't have any objection myself personally for applying to the grant. There are, public information that needs to be continually circulated to people in the area as to what is being discussed and proposed, but this doesn't commit us to the project moving forward at this time.
And so also looking at portions of this right now, is discussions on here. I actually had a resident of the MBPOA. We went onto the beach and we looked at actually legacy drainage issues that are on this Sac Preserve. There's multiple of them that they believe are gullies. We mentioned this at the last work session, that there's opportunities here to fix that, okay, within the right of way as we continue to move along here. Also, as far as use of CPF funding and water quality funding, even on Soakides, we just installed a rain garden on there that unfortunately got washed away because of some of the heavy rains, which we'll have to actually replant recently. And there is multiple locations in Montauk, all Lake Montauk, particularly on the east side and South Lake, where we're looking to put and spend millions of dollars on water quality treatment for stormwater runoff. To me, that was one of the greatest things that we had to look at also. So I don't disagree with what some of the presenters or some of the public comments said today. We've also mentioned and worked with the DEC, and the DEC, not the DEC, the New York State DOT in Amagansett, looking at legacy stormwater runoff, where they actually just cleaned that up and went to the sump. So that is something we'll continue to look at. But overall, that's the project update that we have and how we're looking to try to move forward and go to public hearing. So all the general members of any interested parties would be able to come and make comments.
So just going back, so it's a water quality project with the New York State DEC. How much money is the grant application for, David? What is CCOM applying for?
So I don't have the final number. It was in the ballpark of $650,000 for the eligible expenses, but the grant, I don't have the precise amount yet.
Okay. So why is it?
659 is the number.
Thank you. And what you're saying, Rusty, is if the project moves forward and it's not with goats, that number, the cost of the project is only going to go up because you'd need.
That would be an interesting conversation that we would need to have if we do not use goats. Maybe those 8 acres are not done immediately and be saved for a future project, and see if we can find an alternative methodology. But I'm going to tell you or we increase the cost and use humans to do those steep slopes. It's a conversation that would need to be happening if whichever direction that we are directed to move forward towards.
Great, thank you. So for me, this project first came on our radar here 3 weeks ago. And I know hearing from community members that there are concerns over it. I'm supportive of CCOM going forward with the application for the grant funding, but I'm looking forward to the public hearing that we schedule in September. And we may want to wait and do it at the second meeting, since the first meeting is the week of Labor Day. And we know many people, taking a deep breath that week. So I'm going to support the resolution, but we still need to get more information.
I agree with that.
I agree as well. I think it's important to seek grant funding for projects like this. If it was left, if we passed by on the grants, we would not be able to do a lot of these very important projects in one way or another. So I do support going for the grant funding.
Well, thank you very much. I will offer that resolution today, and we look forward to scheduling a public hearing on this in September.
Thank you, Rusty and David, for joining us today for this discussion, and Kim.
No problem. Thank you.
We'll move on now to our next topic, which is updated certificate of occupancy upon change of ownership. This is something the board has discussed, and we're going to discuss it now publicly as well. Kate, you want to?
Yes,
from here.
I'll just introduce Rob Connolly, who will walk us through the presentation. Joe Palermo is here also and would like to say a few words. This came about as a result of our weekly zoning code amendments update work group. And what we also are discovering through that work group is areas in the code that do not promote the goals of the comprehensive plan and promote development that is organized and regulated. And one of those areas are some codes that other towns have that we don't have in place here right now, that the department heads in particular, this came out of the department heads attending the meeting, have recognized and have red flagged for areas that we have problems with right now. And that includes getting a certificate of occupancy. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rob, who will explain it much better than I am.
So East Hampton Town is one of the few municipalities on the East End that doesn't require updated C of Os upon transfer of ownership. Next slide. These are the municipalities that currently require updated certificates of occupancy upon transfer. Sag Harbor Village actually requires that an updated C of O is obtained within 30 days of closing. So that gives the new property owner up to 30 days after closing to obtain their C of O. This is current section 102.14a. You can see it makes no reference to obtaining a C of O prior to closing. And with one simple change by adding the sentence, upon any change in ownership of a property, an updated certificate of occupancy shall be obtained. There's some exemptions that the board might want to explore. If a property obtains an updated C of O within 180 days of the closing date, you might want to exempt that property from having to go through the process again. And there's also going to be times when property owners, for estate planning purposes, will transfer a property to an LLC or an estate, that you may want to exempt them from having to obtain the updated C of O, so long as the beneficial ownership of the property remains the same. Go to the next. And having handled real estate transactions myself, the majority of contracts of sale for properties in East Hampton, attorneys require their clients to obtain updated C of Os. The benefits of this are to ensure that the properties are compliant with the building code, the New York State Building Code, International Building Code, and the town zoning code. And it will also ensure that properties are being properly assessed. There are some properties that have never obtained a C of O from the town because they may predate zoning. But we all know that these properties have improvements on them that they haven't been properly assessed for. So it kind of, it's just a fairness matter for certain people who are paying their full share of the assessment and others who have improvements on the property that have never been assessed for those structures.
So just to flesh that out a little bit, and Joe, if you want to come up to the podium as well for the conversation, if we could just explain what a certificate of occupancy is and an example of what Rob was just talking about in terms of being properly assessed, and also that properties are meeting the requirements of building code. One, the building code, that's for safety. So if I'm going to use an example. If you're putting in a swimming pool, in the ground swimming pool in our town, we have very strict regulations on how you keep that pool safe and isolated from young children, people who will access that pool. We have fencing requirements, we have alarm requirements. So if you're putting a pool in without the benefit of applying for a building permit, and then the end is to get a certificate of occupancy, no one knows if that pool was put in with the proper regulations in place to safeguard everyone, including the property owners themselves. Another tied with that is the second point on Rob's PowerPoint, that when you put in a swimming pool, it's considered an improvement, and the town has a tax structure where you would pay additional taxes on your improvement, as everyone who obtained a building permit and a C of O are. So if you put an addition, if you put anything onto your property, structures that have neither of these, we don't know if they're safe. It impacts the potential health and safety of the property owner and everyone else. And also it doesn't ensure that everyone is paying their fair share of the taxes in the town. And with that, Joe, if you want to add.
Sure. Well, I think the main goal here is to get more properties in compliance to meet town code, to meet the zoning codes, and also to legalize structures or anything that's been installed without the benefit of a building permit. So we get to legalize those, which there's a lot out there. On our normal CO update inspections, 9 times out of 10, we're finding, patios, maybe sheds, additional things that have been added without benefit of a permit. So we get those legalized along the way. There's fees for building permits. And then the end goal is to get the certificate of occupancy and get everything legal on the property. There's still a lot of properties out there that don't have any COs. We're actually working on one this week that was built in the 90s, and for some reason it never got a certificate of compliance. There's not every transaction is coming to the building department for a certificate of occupancy. I think a lot of the buyers' attorneys are requesting it, but we don't see all of them. And the ones that we see, a lot of times they don't complete them. So we'll have some that are still open. Going through our files, there are about 25 that are still active from 2023 that have not completed the process. And beyond that, from end of 2022 and back, there's well over 250 that are, some of these have open violations. They never completed the C of O, yet the house has transferred ownership. So the object would be to put a ribbon around it and then clean these things up and tie it together.
And that has to do with primarily for us. So I just want to go back to what a certificate of occupancy actually is.
Vic, can you just stop the screen share one second?
So if we go back to
the hand signals we were sending.
When people go through a process of putting any structures, changing anything on their property, basically, or adding anything to their property or their primary structures, adding any kind of accessory structures, the process that is pretty well known is you go into the building department, you apply for a building permit. And through that process, there's numerous inspections, I understand, of the build.
Right. It depends on what the build is, obviously, but from the ground up, we'll do foundation through framing. We do drywall and rebar on pools. We do all the safety checks. And then the final inspection, once it passes final inspection, is when then you are eligible to get the CO, close out the building permit, and make that structure legal.
And that C of O enumerates right on the certificate, everything that's on the property to that date.
If we're just closing out an open building permit, that C of O would usually be just on the work done on the permit, for example, a pool. But if we are requested to do an updated CO, and in this case, what we're talking about, transfer ownership would be a complete updated CO. So we do a complete walkthrough. It's mostly health and safety on existing homes, but we'll also pick up anything that is not on record with the town or illegally built.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Rob. Questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I just have a comment that, you know, this is something I think is long overdue, and it really protects the purchaser of property as much as anyone, ensuring that the home they're buying is safe and up to date with its smoke detectors, pool fences, that sort of thing, and that they don't end up in a situation where there's non-compliance, for instance, with overclearing. If there's no C of O at time of transfer, they may suddenly find that the property is overcleared and that there's a great deal of additional expense to them and revegetation that they weren't expecting to have to deal with. So, you know, it's a kind of buyer beware. I mean, I think most mortgage companies would require C of O for any, you know, property transfer. But we have a fair number of cash sales in town, and we've had some recent examples of homeowners unaware of violations on the property who then were in the position of remediating them. And in some cases, it's quite expensive to do so. So if they'd had the updated C of O at the time, they would have that assurance that what they're buying is legal and in compliance, rather than having those rude surprises later.
Well, I brought this up at the Wainscott CAC on Saturday about this the presentation for today. And some of the folks, one of the questions were, well, what are the penalties for folks who install a pool without going through the proper process? And what do we do in those cases when you're doing an updated C of O and you find somebody added a shed or they added an extension?
Most times they would need to give us a building permit. And by code, the original fee would be double. So that's right now pretty much the penalty. I mean, if we come across something, we'll give a notice of violation. There's occasion where code enforcement will issue a ticket for using a pool, for example, without the benefit of a CO, which is not wise. But the main thing is the doubling of the fee that by code, that seems to be the penalty.
So myself on this, I'm supportive at this look, because I agree with the supervisor. What Peter said is that it does protect the purchaser. A lot of individuals are first home buyers out here, first time ever. And sometimes they're young doing that, naive, and want to just be happy to have a foot in the door, or I think the song says buy dirt, and to get that movement. So this is another level of protection. One request of the board to think about, and then another one for Joe himself. Southampton Town C of O fees right now are higher than ours at $250. Ours are at $200. I don't think they've changed in a long time. I'd be interested to see if we go up to match that based on the amount of work that's going to go into, what do we have, 1,000 to 1,500 transfers a year. And then about that work, because I want to make sure that you have enough staffing in your department for moving this ahead, than to knowing that if there is 1,000 to 1,500 transfers, and that might be conservative, that that's a lot of staff hours that you're already very busy at too. So as we move ahead, please let us know what your needs are too.
I will. Just on a note, I spoke to the tax assessor yesterday. I don't have anything concrete, but they said it's pretty much safe to figure on, like, say 1,800 to 2,400 transfers a year. Now, a lot of those may just be for planning purposes, estate planning purposes, which wouldn't be applicable here, but that still leaves, even at 50%, that still leaves quite a bit.
And then there's the impact on natural resources as well, with Mark Abramson having to, once someone's overcleared, having to go back and forth with the homeowner now, whose burden it is, to develop a revegetation plan so they can go in for a building permit. So
It's quite a bit of those.
it
situations.
takes up a lot of personal resources of the new homeowner or the seller if it's picked up before the transaction at the last minute. That can mess up someone's mortgage rate that they've locked in, but it also protects the town as well and gives us a true picture of development in the town as well. So David, I support that. I think that's important.
Any other questions or comments?
So is this is a code change that we would have to?
Those for a public hearing? Yeah.
Yes, up on the website, and I believe I sent it around to all of you as well as a draft notice of public hearing.
So you're going to notice it on the 17th and hear it the 7th? Is that what the plan is?
Sounds like a good.
Or as we just mentioned, should we do it
The following
week?
Second.
Skip the Labor Day. Yeah.
We still notice it this week or next week and then just have the date delayed on it.
Yep, I think that's the plan. Thank you, Joe.
Okay.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks,
Thanks for your time, Joe.
So that concludes our agenda topics for discussion today. We have liaison reports. Kathy, do you have a report for us
I
today?
do have a report. If you just give me a second to get settled. Okay, so I'm going to start with Human Services. The town just received a new 16-passenger bus from Suffolk County Office for the Aging for our senior transportation program, which adds another vehicle to our fleet. The seniors find these buses easy to board, more comfortable, and they have the ability to spread out from each other. We do, though, have a van in the fleet that we're not really using is because it's tighter. It's hard for the seniors to get up the stairs, and it's bench seating, and the seating isn't comfortable. So Rick Talmadge had suggested that maybe we want to donate that van to the Parks Department. Apparently they need a van. It's got low mileage on it, and since we're not going to be using it in senior transportation, it's just a natural fit to send it over to Parks. Rob, I don't know if we need to do a resolution to do that, or if it's just something we tell Ricky to pick up the van and put it into service with the Parks Department. So if you could let us know, that would be great.
As a liaison to Parks, thank you.
You're welcome. As I mentioned, Saturday morning, I attended the Wayne-Scott CAC. They were interested in knowing when we would be discussing the Wayne-Scott Hamlet study implementation, and I shared with them that the town board is in the process of internally reviewing that study with the planning department, and we're targeting a town board work session in September. They've always been interested in the East Hampton Town Police Department stats. So the chief was kind enough to put together the totals for July. Just as a context, there's approximately 20,000 calls a year. As we all know, Memorial Day to Labor Day is crunch time, and it's nonstop for our PD. But the totals for July, we've had 2,895 calls for service, 79 arrests, 24 DWI arrests, 526 citations, 146 accidents, 399 aided cases, 183 residential noise complaints, and 21 commercial noise complaints. During the CAC, we then moved on to talk about the East Hampton Town Airport. I had mentioned to them that there was only one meaningful update at present as far as the litigation was concerned. And this morning, the supervisor's office sent out a press release on it. That was, in the Suffolk County Supreme Court. We also talked about noise complaints and, operations at the airport. There was a question and some confusion about which noise system affected residents should use when registering a complaint. Explain that, we're still using plain noise. There are 4 ways to report. phone and you leave a voicemail, online form, which is on the town website. You could send an email, or they have the Plain Noise app. There was a question about air noise report, if the town was still accepting complaints from that. And I explained that when we would do analyses, year-end analyses for complaints and operations, we would normally go to the gentleman, because the air noise report is privately owned. He would, HMMH would have conversation with them, figure out what kind of data form we needed it in, and the data was transferred to HMMH, and they would do the analysis. And then they brought up a service, airnoise.io. I'm not familiar with that. I've tried reaching out to Jim both yesterday and today, and we haven't been able to connect. So I want to understand that better and get back to the CAC to clarify that. But I will say we haven't done an analysis of the 2022 operations and complaints for the airport, and the CAC would be interested. I explained that, a lot of that data is going into the secret analysis that we're doing, but they would like to see a 2022 operations and complaint analysis, and then we can, and hopefully air noise reports data will be contained in that. Then we talked a bit about, operations at the airport. Jeff Smith from Eastern Region Helicopter Council attended the meetings. He answered questions about the Sierra route and activity, helicopter activity along the Atlantic shoreline. Questions were also raised about planes pulling banners. Why couldn't the town prohibit that? And, the answer is we're not able to prohibit anything that happens in the sky. These planes, though, do not take off from East Hampton Town Airport. We have a prohibition on that, but they are taking off at Gabreski, and sometimes I've seen postings that they're flying, one right behind the other, and there's three, planes going over. Also, someone brought up that at the end of runway 422, which is on the east side of Danielsville Road, where we typically, when they have Plane Fun Day, they use that as a parking lot. It's now that 422 is out of service, that there are a lot of dead trees. And I said I would reach out to Jim Brundage and Scott Wilson to see if any of them present any kind of issue. We also then heard from the traffic subcommittee. They're fine tuning their requests for stop signs and crosswalks, both north and south of the highway, and they're going to be resending their letter regarding speed limits and signs. There was also a very brief discussion about pickleball courts in residential neighborhoods, and they'd like us to consider legislation. East Hampton Village and Southampton Town have legislation quickly thrown out, maybe larger setbacks, no lights at night, and sinking the court to dull the noise impact. Then we basically ran out of, oh, I'm sorry, we didn't run out of time. We talked about the Maidstone Gun Club. I updated them on the litigation. We're currently in the discovery phase in Suffolk County Supreme Court. The court is currently conducting hearings on the temporary restraining order. The first hearing was held on May 24th. The second hearing date is set for August 22nd at 10 a.m., where it is presumed additional witnesses will be called. There was also conversation about the lease. We all know the lease with the gun club expires this October, and the CAC was adamant that the consensus was the status quo is not acceptable. And they would like to see Chief Sarlo come to their meeting in September, which is going to be via Zoom, so that the CAC can get a better understanding of how and how often the East Hampton Town Police Department and other enforcement agencies use the gun club to train. Here's where we ran out of time, and then I had gotten a follow-up email from the chair. As we all know, we've entered into a DEC consent order for the Superfund site in Wainscott. So we didn't have a time to address this, but they're a part of that order. It recognizes that the DEC has a citizen participation plan, and goals are enumerated as to what what drives it, improving public access to and understanding of issues and information related to a particular site and that site's remedial process, and encouraging dialogue to promote the exchange of information among the affected, interested public, state agencies, and other interested parties that strengthens trust among the parties, increases understanding of site and community issues and concerns, and improves decision-making. So I've reached out to Rob. We had a conversation yesterday. I think it would be helpful if we invited Nick Regano, our environmental attorney, to come in and just give us an update on the DEC consent order, where things stand, and what the role is, and when we will, be launching this citizen participation plan. So I believe Nick is just getting back from vacation, so hopefully he can attend the meeting in person or via Zoom, in the next month or so. And a couple more things, if you don't mind. Last night, the East Hampton Arts Council met to discuss the September 14th event that they're holding at the East Hampton Library, creators and appropriators, what the Warhol and Goldsmith Supreme Court decision means for all creatives. As you remembered last week, we approved the filming of that so that it could be posted on LTV and on their YouTube page. They'd also like to run an ad in the East Hampton Star, and they have money in the East Hampton Arts Council budget, so we're looking to allocate about $500 to run a quarter-page ad. I'll have a resolution on August 17th. And then lastly, the East Hampton CAC met last night as well. We discussed, for the second meeting, the Springs Fireplace Corridor Study, and we will be receiving a letter from the CAC with their recommendations in the next few weeks. And then we can move on with the next phase of the community engagement piece on the corridor study. So that's what I have for today.
Thank you, Kathy. David?
Yes, thank you very much. The Montauk CAC was canceled last night due to known absences. We'll be meeting again in September. We want to let everyone know that today that Maidstone Bay Beach is going to be closed for today. We'll reopen tomorrow. We had to do this based on conditions that are going to be possibly red flag days on the ocean. We wanted to make sure we had ample coverage on the big waves on the ocean. If it was a green flag today, we would open Maidstone up, and Maidstone Beach is not closed for bathing today. Also, with that notice, please be careful on the ocean shores. We've had some incidents with shore break recently, including my lower back. So, I want to thank thank Tom Dess and also the Jones Beach and Heather Hills lifeguards for inviting the East Hampton Town lifeguards and the East Hampton Volunteer Ocean Rescues to participate in a submersion drill that they held last week. It was a very enlightening look at how rescue techniques go on interagency when a body is submerged in the surf on there. The beach down there is very nice down at Heather Hills State Park, I do have to say. Very nice concession stand and bathrooms. I hadn't been down there in a long, long time. So I want to thank them very much for their assistance on that. We'll have a resolution on for next week, I believe it's on, for replanting of Soak Heights bioswale, as I mentioned earlier, due to tremendous amount of rain and the newness of the plant species that they didn't get actually rooted in. And there was some underpinning of the concrete curb that will be on upcoming also then too. And a couple of small little design tweaks that they're having because of the larger storms that we're having. We want to make sure it's a good input and filter for stormwater runoff and the town's initiative to control stormwater runoffs and many of our input points as we continue to work towards that. I will be having an upcoming meeting with members of the Camp Hero Sewer District discussing potential IA upgrades there. This is something that was started maybe 3-ish years ago. And we'll be presenting that to their membership out there. And when I have that meeting and come back, I'll bring that back to the town board. That's what I have. Besides that, CPF advisory committee met, which is always a charm. It's always great to have a discussion with the various intellects that are on there. And that's all I have. I'll have more next week.
Thank you, David. Kate?
Yes, I have a brief report, but what I'm thrilled to announce is that if the board recalls, the Litter Action Committee promoted a contest along with the Hamptons International Film Festival, and we selected a winner of young folks that created PSAs for litter awareness. And our winner was Francisco Velasquez, was a fifth grader at the time at Spring School, and his winning film, Don't Trash East Hampton. And I'm excited to announce that he is now a community ambassador of the Hamptons Film Festival, and they will be first screening his PSA, and he will speak a few words at next Monday's event, which I'll talk about in a second, in English and Spanish. So this is a program put on by the Hamptons Festival of Music in partnership with the Hamptons International Film Festival. It's at Herrick's Park. It is a presentation of Charlie Chaplin's A Dog's Life, the film, with the live performance of the film score by the orchestra at the park. It's free, and it starts at 6 p.m. At Herrick's Park on August 14th. So I invite everybody to come, and I congratulate Francisco for becoming an ambassador and spreading the word for Don't Trust East Hampton for us. That's all I got.
Thank you, Kate. The town continues to vigorously defend against litigation brought by aviation interests in the fight to manage and regulate East Hampton's airport. In accordance with the community wishes. And the town has been using revenues raised by airport user fees rather than taxpayer dollars to defend that position regarding the airport. And I'm pleased to announce that on August 3rd, 2023, Justice Paul J. Baisley of Suffolk Supreme Court denied a motion by the litigants East End Hangars Incorporated and Hampton Hangars Incorporated to require the town's legal counsel on airport litigation to return to the town's airport fund fees that they'd received for work performed after May 16th. The petitioners claimed that temporary restraining order precluded payment of legal fees from the airport fund and sought a ruling to require that our outside counsel return to the airport fund any fees that it had received for work performed after the date of the temporary restraining order. In response to this legally baseless motion, the town argued that the FAA had previously determined airport funds may be used for legal fees. I think this is a really important point for people to understand, is that this litigation is not being funded by property tax revenues. It does not take money from taxpayers. If you look at your tax bill, you'll see the airport line is a zero on your tax bill. That's because the airport is self-sufficient and funded solely by revenues from users as well as leases. The town's going to continue its appeal of Judge Baisley's other grant to permanent injunction preventing the town from deactivating, closing H2, or holding the town in contempt for violations of temporary restraining order. That's currently pending before the appellate division. In other news, we just had this past week conducted our annual debt sale. I'm pleased to report that we received excellent support for both the bond and note sales. The town had a total of 13 bids for serial bonds, which is the most in recent memory. We received a rate for bonds of 2.676% from RBC Capital Markets on bonds. And given the current market conditions, this really is fantastic news, particularly in the light of the fact that municipal bond yields rose 20 to 30 basis points last week, following the downgrade of the U.S. credit rating by Fitch from AAA to AA+. The rate on bond anticipation notes was 5% for JP Morgan Securities. This shows that the town's credit rating of AAA and MIG1 and continues to serve us well, and it benefits taxpayers, enables us to continue to borrow funds for necessary infrastructure at the lowest possible rates. And so that's another good bit of news there. We are continuing, I'm continuing to meet with the various department heads for budget meetings throughout this Thursday, August 10th. We'll have the budget to the clerk, the preliminary budget, by September 29th, and then the next work session we'll have a public discussion of it, presentation, and board members can weigh in. We have had some discussion of looking at fees, to review fees in various departments, which haven't been updated in some time. This has come out during some of the budget discussions that we've kind of lagged behind what the actual fees probably should be to accommodate for the administration of various things. We heard today about the building department with the CO fee being, below our neighbors, and that's just one example. There are a number of other, whether it's natural resources, revegetation fees, whatnot. So we're going to prepare a list of fees that we should review and have that presented at an upcoming work session. I think it's important for us to stay current and provide necessary resources from those fees to cover the administration costs of various permits. And I think that's all I have for now. We have a few resolutions.
I do. I'd like to offer resolution 2023. My eyes are ready for this. 2023-1108.
Where are my glasses? Dude?
No, I'm getting close, man. I'm really getting
further
close.
away, David.
My back, my eyes, my back, my hair. What a tough day here. I'd like to
welcome to my world.
I'd like to offer resolution 2023-1108. This is the point seasonal lifeguard for August 2023, retroactive to August 1st for Lawrence Gulata for advanced ocean lifeguard, hourly rate of $17.25.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Pass and carry.
1109 is appoint part-time harbor master Donald Pepino upon proper submissions of time records at an hourly rate of $25 effective August 13th, 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Pass and carried.
1110 is a title change for lifeguards for August 2023. Individuals listed below, their title, salaries, and their retroactive date changes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Pass and carried.
1111 is the Smolean authorizes CPF project plan edition, where we had the public hearing on August 3rd, 2023. The town board would like to put this property located at 4504 Lane, Amagansett, tax map 300-126-1-11, 1-14.31 on the project plan.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Pass and carried.
1112 is authorize a CPF acquisition and amend the 2023 management and stewardship plan for the property located at 4504 Lane, Amagansett, tax map 300-126-1-14.31. Purported owner is Richard Simolean as receiver. We just had the public hearing on August 3rd of 2023. The purchase price is not to exceed $1,550,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Pass and carried.
1113 is adopt a local law to amend chapter 240 for parking prohibited certain hours on Beach Lane in Wayne-Scott.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Pass and carried.
1114 is adopt a local law to amend chapter 240 vehicles and traffic for permit parking on Beach Lane in Wayne-Scott. We had this public hearing on July 20th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Pass and carried.
1115 is authorized the transfer of a GMC dump truck to the Village of East Hampton in exchange for a 2000 International flatbed truck. And there's no change in finances. It's just a swap of trucks.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Pass and carried.
1116 is approved acquisition of a small portion of parcel by New York State Department of Transportation through New York State PIN 0810.01.221 parcel 8. And the compensation for these valuing prices is at $4,100 and also $4,059.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, pass carried.
1117 is approve acquisition of a small portion of parcel on New York State Transportation, New York State DOT PIN 0810.01.221 parcel 15. And the compensation is at $1,400.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, pass carried.
1118 is a resolution in support of the Benson Preserve Habitat Restoration Project. The resolution in support of the Benson Reserve Habitat Restoration Project, whereas the town of East Hampton is the owner of vacant property on Montauk known as the Benson Reserve, hereafter reserve, and whereas the reserve measures approximately 40 acres and consists of maritime shrubland, grassland, and beach area, and whereas the upper approximate 16 acres of the reserve is threatened by an intrusion of invasive species, and whereas the concerned citizens of Montauk, CCOM, has offered to oversee, administer, and manage a restoration and management program for the reserve, and whereas CCOM will pursue grant funding as well to raise private funds to fund the restoration, and whereas the restoration will include the removal of invasive species of flora and will be followed by planting native species and restoration work, as well as maintenance and monitoring the site conditions thereafter, and whereas the town of East Hampton is fully supportive of the Benson Reserve Habitat Restoration Project, subject to the rights of interested parties, and therefore be it resolved that the supervisor is authorized to direct and execute any and all documents in a form to be approved by the Office of the Town Attorney to consent to the support of the Benson Preserve Habitat Restoration Project.
Second, can I call for discussion?
Second first.
Yeah.
Discussion.
Does the last line, so that the resolve that the supervisor is authorized and directed to execute any and all documents in a form to be approved by the Office of the Town Attorney to consent to and support CCOM's grant application to the New York State DEC for the Benson Preserve Habitat Restoration Project. I mean, you have it in the whereas clause that the CCOM is going to pursue grant funding, but this resolved is very general as opposed to being very specific, which the ask is it's to support CCOM's grant application to the New York State DEC for the Benson Preserve Habitat Restoration Project.
Rob?
Yeah, that's fine.
I have no problem. So we would like to amend it. Like to amend it to the last resolve to read, resolve that the supervisor is authorized and directed to execute any and all documents in form to be approved by the Office of the Town Attorney to consent to support this CCOM's grant application for the Benson Preserve.
To the New York State DEC.
To the New York State DEC.
I think it's consolidated funding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or just grant application.
Grant application.
CCOM's grant application.
To consent to and support the CCOM's grant application for the Benson Preserve Habitat Restoration Project.
Second as amended.
Second as amended, all in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Carol, you okay?
And I have resolution 1119, and this is to accept security and undertaking for your urban renewal parcel 135 and MN-2. And this is whereas the timely construction of roads and drainage within the urban renewal areas, the plan requires owners of individual building lots to perform a predetermined amount of road work at the time a building permit is sought for the lot. And so therefore resolved that the undertaking together with the following security are hereby accepted by the town. The applicant is Sean Murphy, 40 East Lake Drive, Montauk, New York. Tax map number 300-28-6-16.2, and it's in the amount of $12,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. Resolution 1120 is to appoint part-time police officer to East Hampton Town Police Department, Michael Arkinson, and that is at an hourly rate of $28.50. And that becomes effective August 13th, 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried. 1121 is a budget modification, American Rescue Plan Act 2021 funding, result town board. Let's see. This is for a total amount of $2,034,000 $1,720.18. It's been received by the town. Resolve the town board directs budget office to make the following budget modifications, increase the appropriate revenue and expense codes, which will not impact the 2023 operating budget, as the revenue funds have already been received from New York State on behalf of the on behalf of the United States Treasury, and that is to increase the federal aid to ARPA in the amount of $200,000.
Second.
And that's to also budget line transfer of other funds in 200,000, revenue line in the amount of 200,000, and expenditure replacement of Marine One patrol boat in the amount of 200,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed, carried. 1122 is authorized payment for prior year invoice in the airport, and that is authorized to Verizon in the amount of $32.34, less a credit from April 6, 2023 in the amount of $6.07, for a total amount owed of $26.27.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed, carried. 1123 is establish a leave bank share time for a fire prevention employee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passed and carried. Resolution 1124 is to approve the use of the American Rescue Plan 2021 funding acquisition for a marine vessel, and that is in the amount of $200,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passed, carried. Kathy, I believe you have an additional
I have
resolution.
Resolution 2023-1125. It's approval of various special events. Arts Center at Duck Creek, Meet the Author. That's Tuesday, August 8th, tonight, 6 to 7 p.m. Hampton's Pride is hosting the Hampton's Pride Tea on the Wainscott Green on Sunday, August 27th from 4 to 7 p.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passed, carried. I'll entertain a motion to go into exec session.
I'd like to make a motion to go into exec session to discuss CPF leases, an enforcement issue, and personnel.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye, passed and carried. Shall we reconvene at 1:45?
That works.
Very good, thank you. Stay